Okay. Okay. So yeah, I just was delighting as we heard the railway uh, whistle or bell, um, and thinking to myself how lovely it is as we just enter a meditation to be summoned by another bell. And I grew up with trains behind me, and I haven't heard one in a long time. So I really did feel welcomed home tonight as we gathered together. And I would just love for us to pause for a second and take another breath together and to notice the beautiful setting that we're in. I really appreciated Roland sharing a little bit with me about the temple and nirvana, and what was the other word?
Pure Land.
Pure Land, yeah. And we were discussing it being in the West and how wonderful it is that it's sitting where wisdom says that it ought to sit. And so the West is very dear to me. That's where I'm from. So there's just been all these little signposts that it's beautiful to come together tonight and sit and be together. Now, I'm not going to talk about the book. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I know of Vickie, and she's going to tell you about the book. Yeah. So, as Vickie said, we met each other about 30 years ago, and I kind of remember walking into another temple, a church building, and she was playing piano and gathering people there. And Vickie has a gathering soul, a gathering spirit, and it flows through everything that she does. And she quickly made friends with me, even though I'm younger than her.
She reminds me.
And yeah, so we have been friends for that long. But not too long after we met each other, Vickie wanted to make a radical change in her career. And she decided she wanted to be a yoga teacher. And so myself and some of our other friends got to go try out different yoga classes. With some were more like aerobics than yoga. And Vickie very clearly and very soon in her journey decided that no, she really wanted to become a student of the sacred practices within yoga, the sacred lineages within yoga. And that was really neat because those of us that had come to know her through our worship and through our community at that time, that was important to us too. So we just noticed and saw how much that you very early identified that having that sacred thread through everything that she did, and inviting others to notice and recognize and value the sacred in life and in community. So that's something that I continue to value about Vickie. And you know, one of the first practices that I learned from her, other than how to maybe stretch and do mountain pose and a few of the basic yoga poses, was after she had come back from visiting Thich Nhat Hanh in Plum Village, and she learned the practice of the bell. And so I circle back to our first little, what I first said about hearing the railway bell, and how wonderful that all of these things come together to be welcomed into this space. And so I developed the little practice of no matter where I am, if I hear a bell, I pause, I breathe, and I notice. And so I felt a little bit of that connection to Plum Village and to Thich Nhat Hanh and her stories from there in the now. Very simple thing, but very important thing. Yeah? Yeah. And so, as I said, she always wants to share with others. She shares of herself. She shares of her resources. She gives her time. And she welcomes us in, never feeling that you're further along. Just feeling, hey, what can we learn together? How can we go deeper, go higher, however it is that you might express that knowing of things that are important and meaningful. And so with her book, she continues that, and she brings her communities together, her original faith tradition, her yoga practice, her writing practice, and her new communities here. And it's such an honor to be here with you tonight in the Sangha. Yeah, because I've heard her talk about it for so long. So I feel like the fact that we're here together is basically what Vickie's about. She has a gathering spirit. And that's what I think is very important about her book as well. And I'm so excited that you'll have the opportunity to hear a little bit about the reading. So I'm going to let you talk about your book now. And there was one more thing I did want to say, though. And that's that Vickie has a very daring spirit. It's like, oh, I'll try that. You know, those first yoga classes we went to, they were more like step. And she's like, that's not quite right.
Cardio yoga.
Cardio yoga, that's what it was. Ay, ay, ay. And so she kept trying until she found the right teacher. And wow, didn't the right teacher find you? And you listened. Yeah? So you dared greatly into those spaces of discernment and sharing. And thank you for writing your story. Yeah. And I'm going to let you take over now.
Thank you. Wow. Everybody needs a Lana. She is a spark to my Lotus. Oh, so thank you all for coming this evening. And thank you, Roland and Brenda. Again, Lana mentioned this beautiful space that we have to gather in, a sacred space, and that sense of gathering together. So thank you. So this is the third reading I've had since the launch of A Lotus on Fire. And I find that it's so much fun to look through the book and think about the people that I'm going to be reading to and wonder, what's the right passages to read this evening? And I like to show some pictures as well. And so it's choosing pictures. And so this evening, I want to share a letter I wrote to Ty in my journal about my mother, Patricia May Richards, because I met Ty in 2011, just after my mother had passed away from cancer. And so there is a thread of grieving her loss that's woven throughout my story and my book. And so this letter, this reading takes place about 2 months after meeting Ty at the large retreat in Vancouver. And that experience of looking into Ty's eyes and just sensing the love that he is, and also being reminded of looking into my mother's eyes as well. So I'm going to see if I can screen share some pictures here. Yeah. Patricia May Richards. So this particular section is called My Mother's Parting Gift. And it starts with a quote by Thich Nhat Hanh. And he says, maternal love is our first taste of love, the origin of all feelings of love. Our mother is the teacher who first teaches us love. Without my mother, I could never have known how to love. Thich Nhat Hanh, From a Rose for Your Pocket. October 24th. Dear Ty, it seemed as if when you looked into my eyes, you saw all of me, my past, my future, my hopes, my fears, my doubts and dreams, and my tender heart grieving the loss of my dear mother. After learning that her cancer was terminal, I made a conscious decision to let everything else go in preparation for letting her go. I knew it was important to slow down and simply be with my mother during these precious final months of her life. I had the feeling that everything in my life had come together in this moment, and that both my mother and I needed to take this journey together. Cancer and other debilitating diseases have a way of reminding us of what's important. With prayers and determination, the way opened fairly quickly for my mother to move from Calgary, where she lived, down to palliative care in Lethbridge to be close to me and my family. I know the move was difficult for her, but she comes from a family of strong faith and strong women. Although her cancer was progressing rapidly and her short-term memory was deteriorating, we shared a lot of precious moments. We had a few walks around the lake next to the nursing home where she lived, but she tired easily. More often, we would sit in a small sunroom overlooking the lake, watching life pass by in the form of walkers and joggers and mothers pushing strollers as the lake reflected the sky above. These were simple moments of just being and true gifts to me in the busyness of my life. My mother shared many stories from her life. Some I'd heard before, some were new. They were like tiny snapshots of her life. Some happy, some sad, some accepting, some tinged with regret. My mother knew she was dying, and perhaps knew at a deeper level that she had less time than we thought. These stories were her way of reviewing her life. And so I sat with her and listened and laughed and cried as a daughter and as a witness to both her joy and her sorrow. My mother's growing dementia meant she often told the same story over and over again, as if her brain were caught in a groove it couldn't get out of. One of the stories she told was the story of my birth and how much she wanted a girl, what, with 2 boys already? After a short, intense labor, the doctor said, "Mrs. Richards, you have a beautiful baby girl." With newfound energy after the hard work of labor, my mother raised herself up off the bed and said with a smile, "Really? I finally have a baby girl?" From the birthing bed to her dying bed. I can still hear the soft, raspy sound of my mother's voice and see her feebly raise herself off the bed as she told me the story of my birth over and over and over again. I can still see the look of love in her pain-filled eyes. Yes, I've known what it's like to be seen with the eyes of love. Yet sometimes I forget. Finally, as the cancer began to take her, I sat with her, breathed with her, sang with her, cried with her, prayed with her, and finally, when it was time, watched her take her last precious breath. It seemed like all my years of practice and the faith that she had handed down to me had come together so I could be there for her. Along with her faith, my mother's parting gift was a reminder simply to slow down and to savor each precious moment with the ones we love. I made a silent vow in my heart not to let my life speed up again, but to take time to cultivate a sense of living life from a gentle unfolding instead of a to-do list with check marks. 1 month later, I looked into your eyes, dear Ty, and received that same gaze of unconditional love. It was like being seen through my mother's eyes once more. It was the eyes of divine love that sees us all if we simply slow down and allow ourselves to be truly seen. Sorry, okay. So from that scene, I invite us to go to Plum Village. So a year later, or almost a year later, I had the opportunity to travel to Plum Village, which is Thich Nhat Hanh's monastery in southern France. And so this next section is called Be Like the Lotus Leaf. So off we go to France. And this is after I've just arrived. Dear Ty, today is a day to settle in and adjust to our schedule and surroundings. I've taken time to explore the beauty of New Hamlet, starting at the bell tower, then walking slowly through the stately rows of plum trees, then making my way up the hill to enjoy the view of the gently rolling hills and farmhouses in the distance. As I gaze at the peaceful scene below, I wonder what the next 21 days will bring. Will I have the chance to look into your loving eyes again? I am filled with anticipation, but also nervous. Will I feel that vast, expansive sense of love again in my heart Or will I be disappointed? Do I have too many expectations? Breathing in, I am calm. Breathing out, I release. Wandering back down the hill, past the meditation hall, I find myself sitting by the lotus pond. Although there are no blossoms yet, the pond is blanketed with greenery, full of unlimited life and possibility. The morning sun is reflecting off the dewdrops glistening on the smooth, broad surface of the large green leaves. The drops are like tiny diamonds reflecting the light of the sun in all directions. I close my eyes and listen to a symphony of sounds. The low thrum of the frogs croaking, the melodious songs of birds. The pond is so alive with life. I can feel it in my body. I open my eyes and my gaze falls on one solitary frog. A dewdrop on his tiny chest has caught the sun at just the right angle and sparkles each time his tiny heart beats. I can feel my own heart beating, my own heart shimmering. We are both tiny sparks of light, glistening in and out of eternity. So, people often at Plum Village retreats or with Thich Nhat Hanh, and I've heard other people say this, that it's as if he can read my mind. And so this next section is called, Can You Read My Mind? Once more, it starts with a quote by Thich Nhat Hanh from a book called Cultivating the Mind of Love. He says, our mind of love may be buried deep in our store consciousness, under many layers of forgetfulness and suffering. The teacher's role is to help us water it, to help it manifest. Dear Thai, yesterday in walking meditation, you led us through a stately line of poplar trees into the quiet depth of the forest, with a small stream trickling through it. It's a true miracle that so many people can walk so quietly through the forest when they are mindful of their steps. I think Mother Earth must have been very happy to receive all of our loving steps. We crossed a tiny bridge, then wound our way out of the forest and into a clearing, where you stopped and gracefully sat on a mat provided by your attendant. A rustling of jackets and mats and backpacks, and soon we all found a place to stand or to sit, to enjoy in silence the peaceful energy. A few people took their cameras out as well, quietly taking advantage of this moment to be so close to you. I remembered the time in our walking meditation in Vancouver when I raised my camera to take a picture of you. I put it away when I realized that I was mindlessly treating you as an object. Yet now, I really wanted to have a picture of you to take home from Plum Village. I took out my camera and breathed into the place where I feel you in my heart center. Then silently, in my mind, I asked you if I could take your picture. To my utter surprise, you turned and looked directly at me with a knowing look in your eyes and a beautiful smile on your face. With one click, this image was saved on my camera and engraved on my heart. Today you start your Dharma talk at Upper Hamlet, again with meditation. There is something very powerful about sitting quietly in meditation together with over 1,000 people. The field of concentration feels very strong, and I imagine all this peaceful energy rippling out into the world. You begin your talk by saying, "This sitting is like sitting under the Bodhi tree." Meditation gives us the time to look deeply. You seem to glance briefly at me. I am staying in the Bodhi room at Gatehouse. Do you have these secret messages for everyone listening to your talks? A word here, a glance here, a silent transmission of love and wisdom from your heart to ours. This feeling that you can somehow read my mind leaves me feeling vulnerable, exposed. It's like you can see beyond the mask I wear to the thoughts and feelings I hide from others, and even things buried deep in my unconscious mind. After your Dharma talk, once again you lead us in walking meditation, this time winding down the side of the hill by your hut at Upper Hamlet, then following a path through the forest until we come to the foot of a grassy hill. As I follow the mass of people up the hill, I realize that among the trees at the top are 16 stone Buddhas, silent sentinels, looking out over the vast valley below. You stop to sit in their midst, and we all find a place to sit scattered among the statues. Perhaps we are all Buddhas to be. I find a place to sit close to you. Yet this time, I am so nervous, my thoughts are scattered like the leaves shaking in the trees above us. How does one be completely present with a wise teacher who seems to know your every thought? This is nothing like the first time I looked in your eyes in Vancouver. This time, my self-consciousness and judgment gets in the way. With no place to hide, my heart turns to stone. Like the rough stone Buddhas on the hill, your stern Zen master face reflects the closing off of my own heart. I feel self-absorbed. I'm so confused about how this relationship with you works and how to act in your presence. I know I'm overthinking. I simply need to return to my breath and practice and trust that everything will be revealed in time. A lot can happen in 21 days. Or then again, perhaps nothing at all. It all depends on me and my willingness to shed the protective walls I've built around my heart. So I hope that you've enjoyed these snapshots of my life and the experience of being with Thich Nhat Hanh and his community. A Lotus on Fire is part of a growing genre called spiritual life writing that Lana and I both are very passionate about, and my editor of my book, Susan Scott. And so the spiritual life writing weaves together these everyday stories from our life with spiritual wisdom from all traditions and from no tradition at all. It's just that deep knowing, deep within and all around us. And part of my reason for writing and publishing this book is to encourage others to remember and connect to your own stories, whatever those stories we are. We all have these unique experiences that we can take time to reflect on, just the everyday miracles in life. And so we're going to pause now. I'm going to go ahead and just end the recording, and then we'll have some time to have tea and a little bit of conversation. So thank you. Namaste.